talk. And the second talk we've done is with Beatrice, which talk about stress handling. And we talk about mindfulness, we talk about meditation, we talk about what are the symptoms of stress. So if any one of you right now feel you're stressed, I strongly recommend you also to go to our website to listen to that. So today is our first full English event because the topic we're talking about, even all three of us are from Hong Kong, we believe is useful to the wider audience. And today we are on step 2. We jump a little bit, in the future we have some step 1 on design your life and understand yourself, but today we're more on step 2, which means it's understanding the world. So we have 2 excellent speakers today, and we're gonna like chit chat all the way with you. The event we have scheduled for 1.5 hours today, and let's see how it goes. I don't think we'll go over. Probably for the first hour, because we have 2 speakers, we'll go through some questions, we talk about things, and the last 30 minutes, we want to be much more interactive. You could have asked us questions. In the past, we only take questions in the chat box, but might be today we can try a little bit. If you have a question, you can type up your name inside. You can roughly say what is your question. And at the later point, when I call on your name, you can try to unmute yourself and really ask and show us your face so that we can be much more interactive rather than like three crazy people just talking to each other, right? So, okay, that's really where we are and how we're going to set up tonight. We're going to record this session also so that we can put it on our website for people to understand, to see. If you have friends that you think is relevant to them, tell them to join now. If not, they can always visit us on our website later on. So after this long introduction, first of all, Bernard and Lisa, thank you. Good night. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Stephen.
First of all, I'm so honored to have these two usually very busy and very difficult to get. They are hiring for some of the biggest firms, in around the region, and hiring very, very senior people. So first of all, I would like Bernard to explain to us a little bit about their company. We call it HNS, Heidrick Struggles. Bernard, just let us know a little bit about your company. What do they do? And then we'll do a self-introduction about you two.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us, Stephen, and we're very honored to be part of this and see what we can help and share a little bit more ideas. Now, Heidrick Struggles, we're a global leadership consulting and executive search firm. We're listed on NASDAQ and headquartered in Chicago, and we've got pretty much offices in most major cities in the world. Now, our focus, Lisa and myself, we're on the executive search side. And what that means is that we focus on placing, I would say, more senior C-suite executives into different types of organizations. And in terms of sectors, we pretty much cover everything from consumer, technology, industrial, social, enterprises, etc.
Okay, excellent. So, but for the audience, don't worry. Some of them might think that, wow, these two only recruit CEO level, so they should only talk to you, Stephen, and that is irrelevant to us. It's not that case. They hire executives, but they talk to all executives about the general job market and what is happening in their industry. So tonight, we have a wide range of audience here. Some are managers, some are entry level, some are thinking about changing jobs. So we're going to be very general. So don't worry about, it's not all about senior executive search. Today's topic is really about, in general, on that 2 sector, what are the trends and what are the opportunities. And some of you, I would strongly recommend you in our Q&A to ask them some tough questions. Think about this, generally very difficult to get into someone that understands how people hire and what people are looking for. So maybe with that, Lisa, lady first, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit to our audience and tell us a little bit what you do and what are the sectors that you cover.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So I'm actually, well, first of all, I'm the client partner for, with Heidrick, based in Hong Kong, focusing on the consumer practice. Without disclosing my age, but I have nearly 20 years of experience in, recruitment as well as in executive search firm. And my focus has always been consumer and recently on digital side. So just to give you the definition of what consumer means at least in our firm, which we cover, for instance, like consumer products, which is more FMCG, mass retail, luxury retail, hospitality, as well as casino gaming. So these are some of the sectors under my jurisdiction. And most of the projects or positions that we do are either based in Hong Kong, Greater China focus, or some of them also regional role, maybe based in Singapore. So these are the type of the experience that I've been focusing on. So happy to share, some of my experience today.
Hey, Lisa, is hospitality like hotels, resort under you also, right?
Yeah, yes, I
Okay.
thought I mentioned it, sorry.
Yes. No, you did. So I did want to recheck because we have quite a bit of audience that have a lot of sort of interpersonal skill, from the hospitality industry or from the airline industry in the past also. So, they might be interested in, is that somewhere they can go? Right now they struggle also, but what will be the future, right? For hotels,
It's a
cruise
top
line, all
industry
these.
right now.
Yeah. Okay, so Burnett, like your side.
Okay, so Lisa and I, we've got some overlap. So I also cover consumer, but I also look at industrial and tech sector. So tech, I mean more high tech, new tech organizations. And then on the functional front, digital, IT, e-commerce is also what I cover, which is really essentially cross industries.
Got it. Excellent. So maybe we can talk about if mass retail, physical retail is struggling, then what are we going to do in the e-commerce side? So okay, we want to talk a little bit and tap into your minds about your sector, right? The few sector that you talk about. What are some of the general trend that you see happening? Everyone talk about digital, before COVID, but can you just give us a little bit update on the current situation? But more importantly, also post COVID as we go forward. How's your view on those sectors? Just give us a bit of overview, please. So.
Okay, maybe start with me in the consumer sector first. I think, yes, COVID has accelerated, some of the changes and transformation. But what I've been seeing is, in Asia or in Hong Kong, I mean, China is definitely ahead. In the past 4 or 5 years, everybody is talking about digital, this word. But digital, in a sense, apart from e-commerce, digital marketing, I'm also seeing a lot of changing the mindset, being more agile, and also being more automatic and robotic within the organization. So it's internal and external. On one thing, we're talking about having more sales coming from e-commerce channels, having, more focus on the omni-channel experience. But on the other side is really the organizational culture change, having the mindset becoming more agile and going through this digital transformation in a lot of organization.
So Lisa, you talk about omni-channel, right? To the audience, it was really mean this online and offline combination, right?
Yeah.
That's what you mean. Like in the good old days, it's all either one or the other. I remember it's all either physical or it's offline, but then offline or online either. And then later on they talk about this hybrid omni-channel. Then now a lot of people talk about O plus O rather than O to O. Sometimes some people say you're from offline to online, but now it seems like it's an O plus O. So both of them have to be together. Is it true?
Well, definitely. I think, in the past, some of the organization or some of the companies still have some conflicts between online and offline. Both of them trying to struggle and compete for sales. But these days it's really about the collaboration, the customer experience, between both online and offline. And Stephen, you're right. With the COVID, honestly, a lot of firms are, especially in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong seems to be more conservative in the past, especially when it comes to some of the local companies to develop the e-commerce channel. But I think with the COVID this year, a lot of companies are actually putting more focus in terms of human resources as well as technology investment into the online aspect. Yeah.
Great. So maybe you are seeing in the good old days, they will invest only a little in the e-commerce one, but now almost because of the COVID, a lot of organizations just for survival have put a lot of resources during COVID for the e-commerce side. So it's becoming the whole retail platform. Whoever has it has to now do both as the KPI rather than one or the other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I shouldn't say in the past they don't put a lot of resources, but it's just accelerating the
Got it. Got
focus.
it. Got it. Got it. So, and I think one of Lisa's point is when we talk about digital transformation, the audience should not think about it's always about website, it's always about social selling. There are a lot of digitalization involved in optimization, efficiency enhancement. So when Lisa talk about robotics, how can we just use less people, on the back office? These are probably not as sexy as we thought as digital, but it's a
Yeah.
very, very critical part on operation digitalization, right?
Exactly. I think you're right. I think instead of saying using less people, I think we are trying to free up some of the resources and putting some of the operational fronts on, on the automatic side, but, really sparing up the capacity of the people to do more business planning, to do more strategy work, to really help expand and, take ahead of, what company looks like in the future.
Okay, excellent. Then just to migrate to Bernardus, we talk about the focus on digitalization and e-commerce. You look after tech and maybe some really digital innovation companies. What about your insight?
Yeah, so actually, you guys covered a lot of it, and in fact, if I'm not going to talk about consumer because you guys talked about, but industrial sector also looking at very similar things, and you hit the nail on the head when you said optimization. And today, I think companies are looking at historically how they spent a lot of money, but it's always focusing on top line, right? And I don't want to say all companies, but a lot of companies, top line is more important. But because of the pandemic, because now resources are very thin, clients' money is harder to make. They look at bottom line and how do you make the company more efficient, right? And so digital comes in play, whether it's digital technologies or using Internet of Things to measure, output, energy usage, whatever, right? All these things will help organizations, save a lot of costs and be more efficient. So on the industrial side, although still tough, they're definitely looking at a lot more of that. And then I think the other piece is, which is highly related to consumer, is the logistics, the shipping of stuff. Because no matter your industrial or consumer company, sometimes you have product that you got to ship from A to B. And so the optimization of using digital technologies has also made that more efficient. So for example, maybe before when you bought a pair of shoes online, it took 2 weeks to deliver. Now you notice from some websites, you might get it the next day, right? So this is sort of what I'm talking about. And then on the other side is that, whilst there's a lot of organizations that's going through a very challenging environment, there are also a lot of technology companies that's booming because of the pandemic. So just take, for example, food delivery. I'm sure, everyone in Hong Kong has been using a lot of food delivery. So those organizations are booming. Now, anything related to e-commerce and online, which is a, very broad, very big ecosystem, because if you think about it, there's a lot of technology around how they market the product to you. And if, like, for example, if you go online now, right, you'll see different ads pop up, right? And they'll ask you questions. So does this ad make sense? So there's actually a lot of what we call ad tech and martech involved. And a lot of companies within that ecosystem is booming right now. So
Can you elaborate a little bit about, because the audience may not understand, ad tech and martech, what exactly is this? And people with what background they go into that?
yeah, so essentially what they try to do, I'm just trying to explain it in a simple terms. So what they try to do essentially is that historically when a company wants to market something to you, they go to, let's say, TVB, right? And that advertisement is put on TV and everyone sort of sees it, right? What ad tech and martech is able to do is that when you advertise online or on your mobile device, they can actually track data, right? So they know what Stephen likes, what Stephen doesn't like. They know what Lisa likes, what she doesn't like. And so the advertisement that pings you is more accurate, right? And with that, I think it benefits the companies more as they spend money on marketing, because they know who exactly they're advertising to, and also the audience, where, when, all that kind of data. So it's actually been a very big trend in the last couple of years.
Excellent, excellent. So that means to the audience, I think a few things I get out is, if you are looking at what feels that is going to go good is, well, there's a lot of tech company that are booming, related to COVID related services. You might not need to be very techy to be in those companies. For example, Deliveroo, Foodpanda, they all have customer service, but those companies are unlikely to be going on a downward trend. They're probably going to be continue to grow. So you can think about, even if you're in tech, that's great. But if you're not in tech, you can search and look for those companies and see what position they have that is non-tech, but it's within the sector is still booming. That's one thing. And second, when I talk about this ad tech thing, technically it's about marketing, selling to people and finding the right audience to tell a story. But this is all being done in digital. So like who do I target and how do I spend? So this is also a very big area. And we are going to have by the end of the month and earlier next month, two sessions from another world-class organization talking about life in the digital marketing agency or advertising agency, and also in the PR and the influence sector. So we, so keep signed up on our newgig.me, then we will send you the notice. Okay, that is the basic trend job in the job market. And the next sector, I want to come and talk a little bit about. It might be sounding strange to the audience, but I want to ask about the changes in quality that are required in the hiring of the senior executive. Why? Let me explain to the audience first. Is I want to know the new bosses, the new CEO, the new directors that are going to be in charge in the coming 3 to 5 years. Who are they? And are they going to be slightly different from the traditional type of people? That's my first question, because I want to understand that. And the reason is they probably are from a different generation, from a different breed, and they might have a different requirement when they hire underneath and when they try to build an organization that is fit for the digital transformation for the new era that is after COVID. So Lisa or Bernard, like when you see right now companies hiring CEOs or hiring very senior director positions, you see a change on what required?
Well, I think first of all, depending on the companies and what stages they are at, and what they want the person to achieve, what are some of the goals. But we do see there is a trend of hiring executives who can drive the innovation, which who understand the digital trend. Who's more receptive to the market, to the new market trend. And we also see that there's a trend of recruiting younger leadership because of the digital innovation. But I can't say all companies are like that, right? It really depends on the company, of the culture, what they want to achieve, the expectation of the role. But we do see there is a slight trend of, people are more receptive to hiring, younger or high potential leaders into the organization in order to make changes to drive innovation.
And let me just add to that. And I think, and this is even before this pandemic, clients now in general hire leaders. I guess regardless of what age they are, but a lot of leaders traditionally, historically can talk. They're very inspiring. They can do a very, very good speech. But what our clients, what I see a lot more, and I'm generalizing a little bit, is that they do look for leaders that can execute and execute very quickly, right? So it's not like you wait 12 months to get the results. They're looking at maybe 1 quarter, get the results. And then I think the second thing is, which is also related to digital, but they look for executives who can build a strong team, who can not just lead people, but develop people. Right? People development is becoming more and more important in a society where I think there's a lot of competition for good people. So those are 2 points I want to add.
Can I just ask, like, you don't need to talk about names and specific, but if you recall some of the successful placement that is in a very senior role, what are the younger range one you have seen? Like, have you seen someone in the late 30s become a director, very senior, like one level down from the CEO or CEO, or have you seen much younger CEO and COO. So just give us a perspective. Actual, is it happening or it's just a talk?
I think it's happening, like especially in China, to be very honest. I find in China, people want to hire, recruit talents which is under 40, even for very senior important position, and especially local companies, because they move so fast. So they need someone who's really fully 100% dedicated to your job 24/7. So I do see, especially in China, they hire really young executives, and even some of the multinational companies these days. I see what they usually like to hire is, high potential, with runway to take up more, senior leadership position in other markets in future. So there's definitely the trend. Even some of the multinational companies looking for, candidates with the potential, and also can have the mindset to change, make changes, and being agile into the new culture, the new way of working.
Okay, so you talk about this, they're willing to hire more high potential. So I think in the past, it could be more looking for, are you fitting all 10 criteria? And have you really done it before? If you have done it before, then I'm much more comfortable, then I hire you. Like, if I'm looking for a retail thing, then, I got to go find another person that has 10 years experience in retail first. But are you seeing right now that what I meant, you told me is about this high potential? Are they taking a little bit more risk? So if for people that has the right attitude and the right so-called potential, are they willing to risk a little bit if they don't have enough time or they don't have enough industry expertise, or no? They just want both.
Yeah, to be fair, a lot of our clients still hoping for candidates who can fit all the criteria, but younger and more agile. That's the reality, ideally, okay? But I think they also realize that, okay, for instance, what I hear, a lot of clients are, for instance, looking for new CIO or new IT director, right? Because of all the changes, because they find, for instance, in the past, a lot of CIO or I don't mean to offend anyone here, okay? Don't get me wrong. Maybe more infrastructure driven, maybe more traditional. They might not have the business partnership skill set, talking to you, understanding what the marketing people talk about. So these days they might hire, people coming from not directly from an IT director or CIO background. They might hire people from Accenture, who's got a lot of experience doing project rollouts, who's got business sense, multiple stakeholders management. Yes, they might not fit the criteria, but they can offer other attributes to the role. So I think if you ask the client, they definitely want to take all the boxes, but I think they also realize that they need to take the risk if they want to make a change in terms of what they are looking for.
Yeah, and Steve, I've got some stuff to add to that. Clients now, when they hire, and also when we interview now, it's quite different from when I was doing this 15 years ago. Essentially, we look for people with broader, different backgrounds. So 15 years ago, when we were doing this, we would look for people that worked 20 years in one industry, maybe 2 companies, and that's great, right? Loyalty, track record, 1 company. Nowadays, and with many companies, especially if you're dealing with the digital world, right? They're looking with broader exposure because, and I'm talking about digital again, because the digital world is so big. You're not just working in one organization. So the more exposure you have with different organizations, the better some clients feel that this person, shows they are able to adapt, they're able to learn, and they're able to innovate, right? Because you're doing different things. And so these are things that, more commonly I see more now than before, for sure.
That's correct. So that means even at the senior level, they are looking for more diverse background rather than like one person that's only one thing. So I would assume for the audience that are listening, they would trigger down also by saying, if you have changed and done a few things, the diversity might actually be helping. So let me summarize a little bit here, and then I will go to the follow-up question. So I think Lisa and Bernard told me basically they're seeing younger senior management that with high potential and sometimes might be not 100% fitting all the criteria, but if they are high potential, they will hire them. They want people that can not just talk and inspire, but also can execute, right? And execute quick. They want people that can do change management, and they want to have a diverse experience from these people. Okay, that's for the bosses, but how is it going to relate it to the people listening here? When they get into the organization, when they get free hand, how would it affect them hiring the so-called senior managers, assistant manager, might be executive. When they build a team, what do you think their remit or their instruction to their hiring team will be on what type of people we should look at and the culture? So we have to make it relevant to maybe a wider audience. How does it affect that?
Yeah. So Stephen, Lisa and I think we both went to, before this panel, we did talk to a lot of our candidates and friends that are in senior positions that are hiring. So we did do some background research on this. Now, we're not saying that every leader will hire the new type of leaders or executives, right? Of course, in some roles, especially if it's technical roles, you need people with experience or that technical expertise or maybe a degree in related areas, right? But if you look at outside of that, like account management or sales, right? Any role that you deal with people, right? Then that's not exactly a technical role, because we sort of all have that kind of capability, right? And so, take for example, I spoke to one of my CEO placements in the food delivery service arena, and I asked him, I said, hey, do you hire people that don't have that industry experience? And he said, yes, definitely. And of course, ideally, you when you present yourself, you can talk, you're open-minded, but some of the attributes that he talked about is really someone that has humility, someone that is humble, and someone that's authentic. And the reason why he says that is because these are people that are not too hung up on themselves, right? They're open-minded and they're really willing to go out and learn, right? When you're humble, you constantly assess yourself, right? And that learning, openness to learn relates to what Lisa and you were talking about, which is agility. Because if you don't learn, you're not agile, right? And they talked about people with street smarts and EQ. This is also very important because today's organization, no matter which function you're in the past is sometimes different functions, they work in silos, but in today's world, every function has to work amongst each other to make it work, right? And so because of that, the street smarts, the EQ piece plays a very critical role.
Excellent. So maybe we talk about this EQ thing, right? The audience, some of you might know what EQ is. IQ is really how smart you are, right? And then if you can just do the math and do the study and just crank the exam. But EQ is emotional intelligence. Can you deal with people? Can you handle adversity? Can you tie people together? When you're in a room that there are people with different opinions, can you be the person that make it happen and make everybody still moving? So I think to the audience, this is a reflection on, if you've been in jobs that require you to tackle conflicts, that deal with difficult customers. If you're in jobs that in the past have been about putting people together and resolve differences and delivering something, that's EQ also. And that's a skill that you might not think you have, but you should draw it back and explain to potential employer that I have some experience and what are the example and why is it, right? Some of my cabin attendant friends say on the flight you're locked down on a 12-hour flight, and there are some really unruly passengers, and they are arguing against each other, and then how do you really handle them, right? So that's one big point about this emotional intelligence. And this sort of open-mindedness and authenticity, I think Bernard talked about, but this authenticity, might be Bernard actually said you can explain a little bit, because for some of our audience that have not been going out for interview for a while, they're quite nervous and they just basically recite and memorize every single answer, the model answer, and that doesn't do very well on authenticity. So maybe explain a little bit about how do they show it and what does it really mean?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of people that we've met in the past where they're perfect, right? There's no problems, no mistakes ever, right? But I think people, new generation leaders, I think they look for that, right? They look for, what have you done wrong? What was the biggest challenge, you've encountered, right? But what they're looking for is really, what was the problem and how did you overcome it, right? And even if you didn't overcome it, what did you try to do? And then what was the reflection on that to make you change and to make you who you are today, right? And I think that's being authentic, is really, no one, you can't be someone else, right? At the end of the day, you are who you are, right? And no one is perfect. But the key thing is about accepting or realizing, where your shortfalls are, where you lack, and learn from that. So that's sort of what I mean, it could be a broader definition, but that's my.
I think that's great. So to the audience, my 2 cents is this, right? A lot of time the interview question is, oh, what are your weaknesses in area of development? Then you give them some bullshit example and say, oh, I work too hard, too long hours, and then my boss always tell me that I'm too dedicated and I should give some more time to my family and my friends. Maybe you cook up some answer and say, oh, my bosses always tell me that I overdo the work and I could have not be a perfectionist. These type of answers now, they might not really cut it. They really want to say that, why might be in the last 10 years or last 5 years or 3 years, I make 1 or 2 mistakes and I didn't know at that time. But after I learned it, and what did you learn and how would it be useful for you in the future? So I think for the audience, for interview, you better go back and think about some 1 or 2 story that really is not this BS story about turning your so-called what you think is your strength into your so-called weakness and just try to get by. So Lisa, what's your view? So.
No, I think Stephen makes a really good point. I think it is okay to talk about your gaps, your areas of of development. What are some of the things that you think you would do differently if you have to take the same task? We always want to hear the real thing, the real story, and what was the learning, as Bernard said. So you don't have to make it up. I mean, I personally have lots of gaps as well. So you just need to open up yourself. And I think the most important part is, you have to reflect and think about what are some of the things that you can do differently if you have another chance. And how does it relate to the job that you are applying? It is so I think that's what we are talking about, being authentic and being honest and taking being honest about it and learning from the mistakes.
There's one thing I actually want to add, and I totally forgot about this point, which is pretty critical, is also passion. When you go for interviews, you really truly need to be passionate about your job, what that industry is, and it's not just talking, right? And one of the people that I asked also said, look, I want someone that's hungry, passionate, and curious. So they ask the right questions. They think about what the job is and they think about scenarios and they ask the right questions during the interview. Interview is usually 2 ways, and if you have a discussion instead of an interview, that's always better. And he also talked about, and not right now, if you don't have a job, it's fine, right? But he actually looked for people who actually went out and did maybe a short degree, right, in that area, right? And he says that actually checks a lot of boxes and actually demonstrates, real passion, authentic passion.
This is great. I'm going to drill on this a little bit more because I find it very useful because it's generic enough to our audience, because it's not exactly how do you do interview, but we're talking about what people look at. And you talk about open mind and willing to learn, right? But anyone can go to an interview and say, I'm open-minded and I'm willing to learn. And then, but how do you, when you two gauge someone, whether they're open-minded or willing to learn, what do you look at? Is it really a whole list of certificate that I've joined, like the MIT 1-week program, I do this and do this, like, how do you look at someone, whether they have this openness and willingness to learn? How do you look at them?
Yeah. So, Lisa, you want to go first?
I can talk a little bit. I think, well, yes, passion is one thing which you can't deceive it. I can tell you one example, that there was one candidate of mine who used to be a general manager of an international company. He's in the food and beverage business, selling chocolate and candies. And he personally is very passionate and about technology, about digital. So he took a lot of courses. And at the same time, he took his Saturday and Sunday to be Uber driver. He wants to understand and learn about the technology and why people use it and how to use it, so he can have the first-hand experience. And now he ends up as a GM with another technology company. I think this is real passion, right? And you can give example. It's not just about talking about it. It's not just about just BS. I think you really have to make an effort, because I've also seen some of the candidates, even they're applying for some of the digital jobs. They might not have the most relevant experience when it comes to the technology or technical part. But like on Saturday, Sunday, they would develop an app themselves, right? So I think this is passion that you can show.
Yeah, and then to add to that, when we interview people, people always say, yes, they're passionate, they're this and that, right? But when we interview people, obviously we look at their CV. The CV is actually a story of you. And so we do go down into the CV, ask specifically what you've done, but that shows passion, right? If you were, for example, in a big company, but you did something that was entrepreneurial within that big company, that can also demonstrate passion. Or you suggested something to change something, that can also relate to passion. So it's not just all talk, and it's always good to have examples to back that up.
I think that's great. I think the point about passion I want to build on a little bit is just my personal experiences. I worked in a very big organization in the past, and I was a CEO, and I came out and do a startup. And I can tell you right now, the world is so competitive and so complex. And frankly, if you don't really like the industry and you don't really love the thing that you're going into, it shows very quickly, because the world is no longer able for people to just want to make a living and get their paycheck and just I go 9 to 6 and I deliver and then it will be fine. It's so cutthroat right now out there that you have to really love the industry that you're in. So I think with Brenna's point, I want to warn every single audience on here is, if you are, if just for the sake of living, you need money and you need to get a job that pays, that's fine. But I strongly encourage you that it's not going to be a long-term fulfilling career. If you need to do what you need to do to pay the mortgage, pay for food in the short term, it's okay. But you have to ask yourself deeper what exactly you love and what exactly you like. And that's why, in Newgig, we have this thinking about understand yourself and understand the world. Right now, you're understanding the world, but I strongly encourage you to spend some time to understand yourself and then ask, how does the world and how does yourself match? And if some people really like something and learn about, it's not going to make a lot of money, you might have to personally dig very deep and ask the question about which one I really prefer. I prefer money, or I prefer, just really being happy every day doing what I love. And they're always going to be trade-offs. So I strongly encourage our audience to really, find some time to understand yourself so that you can match to the world. Okay. And on the second point about being curious and why, I just want to build on also from my experience, because I'm hiring, I've hired some people in the past quite a lot. For the younger ones, when you go in positions, I think right now the new leaders does not want to get people only people that say yes, like the shoe shining type of people. Like you go in, even though you're junior, you're like a executive or assistant manager. Like I do not want to see all my team to say, boss, I wait for your instruction and I will go. And I want to see people that will ask questions. And sometimes might be the experience is not there, as you might not have the best solution. But I want to find people, even if they're junior, they are daring enough to ask, boss, why do you want to do that? What exactly are we trying to solve? Maybe if you tell me, I can give you a few more examples. Maybe I'm not that experienced, but you can try to listen to my opinion, right? So I think, especially if I look at the tech firm and the startup world, if you want to go into those areas, they are not looking for just people to take an order and say yes. They want people to say, well, why, and ask why. But at the end of the day, still also respect the hierarchy by saying that after you give them the opinion and so on, if the boss make a decision, you go with that. So this point of curiosity and always asking why and how can it be done differently is also quite an important aspect. Okay, so enough of me talking about it. So let's go to the second topic. For the audience right now, if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat box, leave your name, all right? And later on, we can call your name and we can ask in person. If not, if you don't feel comfortable, just type it in, I'll read it out. So let's talk about this so-called digital transformation. You know, it's like the hype word that everybody talks about it. You know, it seems to me to be the big things, but what exactly are the roles and responsibility that are related to this thing so-called digital transformation? And you know, is being digital the only option also? You know, so you know, Bernard, like you're in the tech sector, right? So tell us a little bit more about what are the roles in the digital transformation area.
Yeah, look, I don't think digital is the only way to go, but I think to survive and to be in this environment in the new age, which is coming or is already here, you have to at least understand and appreciate the broader digital technology, right? And so if you can't even talk about it or you don't even understand it, then you're putting it yourself in a category where you become obsolete, because everyone has most people has a smartphone, right? And so everyone has a computer, right? And so you need to be savvy enough to know this. But with digital transformation, I think on one side it has cut a lot of jobs, which is sad. With AI is going to cut a lot of jobs, but on the flip side, it did also create a lot of jobs, right? And so, a lot of companies. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball in terms of what's going to be hiring, et cetera, but because of all the restructuring, there are a lot of new jobs that are created. And whether it's a lot of change management jobs, transformation jobs, or just jobs with new technology companies. For example, if you look at Hong Kong, fintech, virtual banks, right? These are a lot of new jobs that are new sort of companies that are hiring really quickly right now. And so with this, there are a lot of new opportunities too.
Maybe I can add as well. I think because of the digital transformation, that there indeed are actually a lot of newly created positions within a lot of organizations that are high, in really high demands. And actually, I find that there isn't enough talent, in Hong Kong as well. I think there are new roles coming up, including, different aspects. One is more on the customer side, understanding the customer experience, customer journey, which including like digital marketing, how you place that, how you support marketing and salespeople, the payment process, etc. And also the e-commerce people. The other one big thing is really about data analytics, like data scientists, BI. These are actually a lot of companies find it really difficult because to hire, because how to dig, how to do the data mining, how to interpret, for instance, like how to cut the data segments, etc. Like what's, for instance, like coffee, right? What's the the behavior of people buying coffee? What time? What's the customer segment? What's the behavior? Like, do they just buy black coffee, and on top of black coffee, they might buy cookies as well? So they get all this information in order to support the retail team and also the marketing team to generate more business. So I find, data mining, data scientists and also BI are also some of the roles that a lot of the new roles that a lot of companies are looking for as well. And also technology, IT, well, not necessarily newly created position, but because of the need to change new technology, new tools. So I find they are changing the spec for the CIO as well as IT director. So these are some of the new roles in the markets that we are seeing.
So Lisa talked about data scientists, or data. So I just want to tell the audience a little bit is, some of you understand what is a data scientist, and you look for very sophisticated, people that get paid a very high salary, and you might be on the pinnacle of the data side, and you think it's never going to be me. But I built data science, I built data teams. It's not every single one is a data scientist. At the end of the day, most organizations at the first level need a data analyst.
Yes.
So first, so don't be so afraid, if you're not afraid of numbers and can handle even sometimes basic Excel, and then if you can go online and learn a little bit about, some data generating sort of tool, handling data set, or might be, we talk about if you know how to extract data from a MongoDB database and download it to Excel and run some query, that's already, one step. And the key also is not to just run the data, is can you, from a sea of data, at the end of the day, come back and tell people there are some insights, I see something, a pattern. So I think these things are quite interesting and useful. And if some of you have quite a bit of a technical background, right, but you haven't really touched data for a long time, but maybe at least, from the good old days, you study math in A level, you study engineering or science degree, anything actually in college, but you haven't done it, it's always okay to go back. There are a lot of online courses in from that, but if you're not afraid of numbers, it's not really rocket science. Of course, there are the ultra advanced predictability model, those, if you're much more advanced, you can go there. But I just want to mention the point is it's not all about data scientists. It's about data analyzing and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so Burnett, anything?
Nope, I think we've covered a lot of it. Actually, there is another thing which is more broader, is really about partnerships. I noticed a lot of my clients, they are now building a lot more partners. I mean, you compete with one another, but yet that you can also be partners with one another. And so, the ability to, and maybe I'll take, for example, consumer brands, or we all wear, clothes, right? If you notice, there's a lot of clothing brands that would do cross branding with other, for example, I saw North Face do a crossover with Gucci.
Yes.
And so there must be people, there's people in these organizations where they now think about these creative ways to do it, but someone in the organization needs to go and call someone at Gucci to build that partnership, right? And so I think there's a lot more of this going on. And I think clients are also looking at people that can, build partnerships and be creative and innovative and thinking of new ideas. So this is another area that I do see clients, having an eye open for.
Okay, so one point I want to tell the audience from my own perspective, what we're trying to talk about really is either you are very specific in one part of the digital journey, then you would go and execute. But I think all in all, what Bernie talked about is a great point is, if you know nothing about it, then you are obviously obsolete already. But that doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in everything. It might not be, and it might not be you have to be an expert in anything, but you have to have a base knowledge. And my argument to you all is the base knowledge is just not that difficult to find. It is about your hard work, and everything is on the internet, really. Of course, you can take a class and take a degree, but some of this basic thing, if you read enough and study enough and watch more video enough, you probably get a general sense. And when you are getting an interview, when you get in the discussion, you only need to know how does these things correlate to each other. You may not really need to know how it's executed if you're not applying for that particular role. But if you're a tech firm hiring someone that is doing partnership or doing sales, they would expect you know a little bit of it. And let me be a little bit more specific. If the audience right now are trying to say, okay, I'm quite new to this, what should I go search and look for, right? In a very general question, I would say, first, maybe go ask the question and say, how does technology make us doing back offices or make things more efficient and doing it easier, faster, right? And some of the things you will come up would be robotics, some of them would be like automation tools, right? So this is one area you can just look and search, and you can have some information, you can listen and you have. Second point, how do we sell online? There's two parts of that, right? One is about setting up an e-commerce store. how is it easy? Is it difficult? Right? We have Shopline, we have Shopify, which is very easy to set up, right? And then like what are the payment options, right? Right. Think about this, right? Just at least read it through and understand it. And the third area might be, well, how do we tell the stories and find the right target digitally? This is about so-called digital marketing, right? It's like just learn a little bit about pay advertising, learn a little bit about non-pay advertising search, and learn a little bit about Facebook, IG advertisement, right? Just search this thing in general, then you know a little bit more about these areas. And on the other part, which is what Lisa talked about, is the data part. So that's my 2 cents to you. But is digital the only option? And I think what about other opportunities that are non-digital, or maybe not non-digital, that are still probably offline, physical? Like Lisa, you're on the retail world. Is it going to be like no more stores, no more salesperson, no more shop manager, no more restaurant managers? What about those?
I think everyone talks about digital because there's it's emerging. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of business shift to those areas. But I think a lot of traditional roles still exist. It's just that I think because of the current situation, a lot of companies are getting a lot more, conservative when it comes to hiring new staff. But I do see they are trying to take the opportunity to upgrade the current operation in terms of, maybe replacing or, upgrading the team. So there's still a lot of opportunities in the market. It doesn't really have to be digital. I think, yes, digital trend is, it is really hard to talk about, but I think sometimes it's also the mindset. I mean, it's just simple. Like even if you go to all this, luxury shop, right? These days, they get your number, they will WhatsApp you and text you, which is very different way of working compared to the past, or they WeChat you. So it's also embracing the technology into the sales technique. So I don't think it's just digital. There's still a lot of traditional roles. Yes, there might be less newly created position, but there's still replacement, going on, I think.
Okay, great. But then, Lisa, I want to also ask a very practical question. Some of our audience say, I might have been in the hotel industry for a long time. I might be in the service industry, or being a flight attendant, or being an airport check-in staff. Or I may be in a tour guide for a long time. Is it really true that Mr. Wong, Stephen Wong, is just telling us it's possible, it's possible. You just try, you can change jobs. Like practically, how should they look at the ability on changing fields if they have served in a certain industry that is more the hospitality one, or like the aviation one, or the tourism one in the past? I have people told me that it sounds great that I want to change, but I go everywhere, people say no to me. So can you give them a reality check on what are remotely possible that we just require very hard work, what are really very difficult?
I would say it's never easy to have a total change of the industry, and have a total, in terms of a big difference of what you used to do. First of all, you really have to think about what you are passionate about, and also manage your own expectation, because when you change industry and when you are actually doing something that you don't have in the past, there's going to be salary cuts in reality, right? Because the company is also taking the risk to to appoint you, to hire you. So I think that there needs to be certain expectation management, and also you need to think about what you are passionate about. And there are actually relevance, even though like maybe I'm in the airlines industry, I'm in hospitality industry. Yes, the industry is tough, but there are other industries that you can work with, which the skills can be transferable. I've come across, one of my clients actually in really high-end watches brand. So she intentionally hired hospitality people to join as sales, because they feel that they're not that sales oriented, but they have very high service level. They are good in retaining the customers. So there's actually some relevance, even though you might not have that skill set, but there's certainly some relevance when you look for other jobs. But having the managing the mindset, your own mindset, is also quite important.
So I think one of the key points is if you want to change industry, you might have to suffer a little bit on seniority and also pay because you're changing role. But so to the audience, I think you need to be realistic. Changing is never easy. But if you want to change, my recommendation to you really is to think about whether there's in industry that you're passionate about. If it is, it's easier to live on a little bit less money because you get satisfaction from just non-monetary side. But secondly, I also strongly encourage you, study hard whether the industry is going up or going down. If it's a sinking industry, even you change job, you reduce salary, your salary is not going to go back up. If it is a up and coming industry, very likely you can catch up your loss when you become verified and certified that you could perform in that particular industry. That's probably my 2 cents to people. Bernard, you?
Yeah. So obviously, I think what Lisa and what you just said, very relevant. I think the other piece is it's not easy to change. And I think honestly, if we think about using numbers, right? If we say 10 people, maybe 1 or 2 people would be easy, will be able to change industries. But the trend that I've been seeing over the last 10 years is that I do see more and more people able to sort of switch industries, switch backgrounds. So I do see more of that now than before. So I think it's there. The other piece is that, there's 2 people that I was talking to who did manage to make an industry change. And there's 2 points that I was able to sort of pull out from both of them, right? I think number one, they want to change, but they weren't just sitting there hoping that a change was going to come. They seriously went out, talked to a lot of different people, did a lot of research, and tried to make it happen, right? And then the second step of that was that whichever industry that they weren't familiar about, they did do a lot of research. They did a lot of homework. It could have been, one of them actually took a course on it as well, right? So it's a deep dive and really tried to learn it. And both of these people sort of had both of these, they did the same thing, really, talked to a lot of people, did a lot of research, learned about the new industry, and they were able to make a change. So it can happen. It's not easy, but it does happen.
Lisa, also, do you two have some other example? Can you give me one example? Other examples on someone that have changed but that's been successful, and how was their journey?
I think I shared one before. I was talking about, a candidate that I know for many years. He was actually, a general manager for a multinational company selling chocolates and candies, right? And then because he's really passionate about technology, he took a course, about digital AI and all that. He went into a lot of conferences and, getting himself networked, and he was Uber driver during weekend just to understand the industry, why people use it, what's the new trend. And now he's becoming a general manager for a technology company, and he really enjoying it. Totally different industry, totally different skill set. And he talk like a tech people now. He talk like he really knows all the stuff, engineering stuff. And he said well, first of all, he's very curious and he's just very passionate about and he feels that's the future trend. And that's the reason why he spent all his time doing all this and take the risk, quitting his job, took a few months off and, find this opportunity. And it's really cute telling, hearing him what he said, going through the journey, learning the stuff.
Great. I see one question came to me. Is asking this: when you're hiring someone from outside industry, what are the qualities you look to make up from the less industrial experience? This is still on the topic about changing. And so it's a question that privately sent to me, so you might not see it, Lisa. But for both of you, like, how would they present themselves? When you're hiring someone from outside industry, what are other qualities you look for to make up the less industry experience? Is it the same thing that Bernard you talked about early on, or what?
Yeah, so
Changing the industry, not changing of roles, right?
Change of industry, actually. Yeah. So
no, I think when you look for someone that's changing industry, it is related to what, you know, the earlier discussion, right? It's about being able to prove that you have a very high learning agility. You can learn, you can make a change, right? And it's not just saying it. It's having, you know, proven experience that you were able to do that. I think those are very, very critical ones because you know, we've seen a lot of people where they actually failed to make a change, et cetera, but they do it again and then, you know, they were able to do it. And so, you know, when we present candidates who we look in that category, that's a very, very mission critical thing that they need to have.
Yeah, and I think you know, even you change industry, you know, a lot of companies are still looking for similar attributes, including like leadership skills, stakeholders management, innovation, driving P&L. So if you already have this type of attributes and experience, you can change industry.
and I think I would supplement by telling the audience might be when you're thinking about going into another industry you like, you should try to take a two piece of paper. I say one and say, go ask those bosses what soft skill they want, and the other piece of paper, what hard skill they want. And if you have none of the hard skill, um, go search and watch some YouTube video to the point that you at least understand what the hell they talk about, and you say, I'm really not an expert, but at least you sounds like you know it. But you can, but you can tell them, but for sure I cannot really do that. But then you look at the soft skill list they have, and you must look at yourself. Do I have some of the soft skill that is going to be useful to them? It's going to be beneficial to them. If there is a yes, then you at least have a chance. If you don't have the soft skill and you don't have the hard skill on both, it's probably too difficult to try on that part, right? That's just my point of view, right? If you've been a flight attendant for a long time, you might not know you have a skill, but you know, listening English on any accent and understanding it, it's just a skill. But if you go to a tech firm, it might be useful, might not be useful, you know.
Yeah.
But if you go to a restaurant, it's useful.
Yeah, just to jump in, and when you say even changing of industry, you have to change relevant industry, right? You can't be, I'm a partner of a legal firm and change it to become, you know, a CEO of airlines industry, right? So you got to have some relevance of what you're doing in terms of industry. You can change industry, but usually it's more adjacent or you know, related industry, more relevant instead of totally different industry, I would say.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, look, if you look at customer service, right? For example, right? I think if you're in that customer service or sales angle, you can potentially sort of switch totally different industries with customer service
Customer service, yeah, you're
But
correct.
I think some job functions you can, but I think it needs to make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So we are at 10:05. So I think I'm going to ask one more big topic about Hong Kong or outside Hong Kong. Then we're going to try to answer some questions together. Some are asking, you know, what about, there's two angles. What about, you know, I can find jobs in Hong Kong, but what about some people saying that, you know, should I look out? And if I look out, where should it be? You know, is Singapore better, or is about China? Can Hong Kong people go there and be relevant still? That's one question. So, you know, what about geographic region? What do you think, and what do you see as the trend?
Well, maybe let me try to answer first. I think, of course, depending on the family situation, right? But the reality is, I feel a lot of regional headquarters have started moving out of Hong Kong, maybe to Shanghai or Singapore for different reasons. You know, first of all, I think Singapore government has also been very aggressive in terms of offering, you know, tax incentive, you know, to attract a lot of regional headquarters there. And also China being the biggest market, some of the regional headquarters has moved to Shanghai. So yes, there seems to be less headquarters, you know, in Hong Kong. So if, you know, the candidate is mobile, or if you are mobile, or, you know, that's good opportunity, definitely these are the prospect markets you can look into, I think.
What about this question about Greater Bay Area? Or I talk so much big about Greater Bay, like and Macau seems to be having so much jobs, so many jobs, and is it really true everyone can go to Macau and get a job because there's so many? Assume they recover, right? What about going to Macau? You know a little bit more, Lisa, on the challenge.
Yeah, I think for Macau, these days would be very tough, to be very honest, because they haven't recovered yet. And even they've recovered or in the past, because I think that the government has been quite protective of local laborers, which they have labor quota for hiring people from outside. So each company actually have quota to recruit people being non-Macanese. So it's depending on how difficult it is for the position to recruit people internally. They would definitely want the companies to hire local people first. So it's getting more difficult for a lot of companies to get work visa for external employees unless it's really, really senior. So that's I'm seeing the trend for Macau. And Greater Bay, yes, a lot of companies are talking about, even Hong Kong companies, because Hong Kong is relatively small, and there seems the governments, both side Hong Kong and also the China government, seems to have more policies in terms of encouraging Hong Kong companies to go beyond Hong Kong and go to Greater Bay. What I'm seeing right now is Shenzhen, is starting to be a very solid technology center, technology hub, which they have recruited a lot of, talents in that area. So if you are interested and open-minded, you can definitely, explore, I think Shenzhen, with a lot of startup and entrepreneurial companies in the technology areas.
Bernard, any supplement?
Yeah, I would say there's quite a lot of startups, and maybe no longer startups, but there's a lot of companies that's growing quite fast in the Greater Bay Area. And some of those that are trying to go international are trying to hire people that can, bridge both sides of the culture, right? So obviously you need to speak Mandarin because, the culture in the company, they might just use Mandarin, but they really appreciate those people that can come in, work with a local team, but also be able to talk to people internationally, and Hong Kong actually is well positioned for that. People in Hong Kong are well positioned for that because we deal with a lot of diversity.
Yeah, so I think there is a point here on my view of China right now is a bit like 20 years ago when I went to college in America. If you want to stay and work in America, you can't ask the Americans or the American job market to adjust to you. You as a foreign student have to really do your English well, learn the context. You have to speak English to go apply for a job, and you have to show that you're able to mingle and hang around socially with Americans, at that time. And this is, I feel the same in China right now. So if you want to go there, you have to really work hard to be able to assimilate it. You be able to operate in the language, the context, right? And it's just a much bigger market. And the point I think we're going to talk about is very good. Is might be we still have a role to help them go outside, but then you need to look at which company are so-called looking to go outside, because some tech company in China say we're not going to go outside. China is very big already. I don't really care. Some and say no, I have a great product and I want to go outside. And no matter how they find people, they still find that it's a bit of struggling. But it's a give and take. People, if you need to go to China or to Greater Bay or whatever, it needs to have some commitment. It's not as easy right now that you as a Hong Kong person to go in and you become relevant. Frankly, we no longer as a Hong Kong person has the advantage. And you see, even I've seen Singaporeans that speak Mandarin, Malaysians speak Mandarin, Taiwanese speak Mandarin. They need to work very hard in China right now to be able to perform and still be part of the game. But
And
if you're
Stephen, I think it's not just the language skill, because the entire ecosystem is totally different in China. If you take a look into the payments method, they use WeChat, we use maybe Facebook, and so it's actually totally different. And the entire ecosystem, and they move so fast. They have so many gadgets. They have so many new initiatives every other day. And I noticed that even some of the local companies, they work really, really hard, like really 24/7 because they have so many initiatives. A lot of them wants to go IPO. So it's really about understanding the market. What are some of the changes? Not just about language. I mean, language is really the basic, I think.
It's language, it's context, and it's do you understand how they operate, right? So
Yeah.
it's a personal choice for many people. You have to pick and choose, but Hong Kong is a very small market. So a lot of my friends are looking either if you want a bigger market, they go to Southeast Asia and they go to China. The challenge also of Southeast Asia is a very fragmented market, and there are a lot of languages. You can't learn Indonesian, you can't learn Malay, you can't learn all these languages overnight. So that's really the case. And arguably, my experience in Singapore is much better suited as a hub for Southeast Asia, really, because on the diversity side, and the geographic region, they have so much connections on that. So that's my point. Okay, why don't we now turn to some of the questions? I see a question talking about, I have been in the retail store level industry for many years. How would my experience be still relevant in e-commerce? Let's answer this question, and after I see Bao is asking a question, and I can open up the mic to Bao, and Bao can ask. So why don't we take the first one first?
How can I see the question? Where's it?
It's in the chat box. No. It's sent to me privately. So let me read it to you again. I have been in the retail store level industry for many years. And how would my experience still be relevant? Let me just repost it out. Okay, everyone. Yep. Okay, it's in the chat box now. So someone that has been in retail store selling for a long time, and is it even possible they can be relevant in e-commerce?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you have been in the retail and store level for a long time, why would you want to change if you are really happy what you're doing, you have your own customer base, right? You really doesn't have to change for the sake of changing. If you're doing good, you have your own customer base. And I think it's all about, I don't know which company you're working with, but I think it's more about being able to emerge with a lot of changes the company is initiating because of all this digital transformation. Because I know a lot of companies are also initiating a lot of new initiatives, new technology that can support the sales. So you don't really have to change what you're doing. It's really about emerging the new technology and maintaining your own customer base and doing what you are good at. That's how I see.
For that, e-commerce is your area.
Yeah, look, I think it's possible, but I think more specifically, you will need to look in the customer service side of e-commerce companies. Because obviously, if you're in retail, you're in store level, you're dealing with people every day. Sometimes they're tough customers, but it's about your ability to communication and all that. So potentially, I think definitely, right? But of course, if you're going to look at roles in the technical end, probably going to be a stretch. But I think these e-commerce companies, they're all hiring. I mean, a lot of them are expanding, in terms of their customer service and how they can, drive that better. So possible.
Might be a view on, it might not be the only all or nothing game that you're in store, then you go to e-commerce. I think Lisa get a very good point, and Bernard talked about earlier also is, might be you can stand out also still do physical sales if you know how to apply technology on the sale. Like I don't know, I'm just making it up, like you are so smart to use all your communication channel to retain customer, or might be you have some apps on your hand that that I can take a picture of your shoes and actually identify how much it is and do comparison and your size. I'm just trying to say, I think even in the future in the physical retail store, a technology will be applied to help them shop. If you're not tech savvy, you might also be not relevant. Might be in the future the in-store helper need to help someone in front of a digital mirror and click, for selection. So I think those are the things you should think about if you're in the physical store. Think about how you can learn enough technology. When the technology comes, you showcase that you can use it very quickly and good. Okay, the next question here really is, Bao, maybe I open up, you can unmute yourself and show us and you can show us your pic. Yeah, you can ask your question because it's easier. So.
Sure. Hi, Stephen, Lisa, and Bernard. Thank you so much for your time. I can see, are you still in the office working so late? So thank you so much. My question is more on, has there been a culture shift from the employee side? Because for me and many of my friends, when they often say that if you work for local companies, then you have to work more than how many hours, I don't know. And then international companies like Google, Facebook, whatever, they have different cultures. And now younger generations, they probably value more lifestyle, more on talent development, the culture of the company. So have you observed any shift from that perspective?
Let me try to answer your question. Our clients now, all of them, every single one of them talk about culture now. Every single one of them, right? Now, whether that culture is being able to work 7 days a week, 24/7, or having a culture where there's more work-life balance, that really depends on the different organizations, right? But one key element that I do see with actually amongst, I think, all of my clients is really that ability to work with everyone. You have to have that ability to collaborate and be open and be able to work with different types of people. So I think all the organizations that I work with have that, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but culture is highly emphasized with all my clients, but different clients, do focus on different things.
Lisa, any supplement?
No, I think Bernard has pretty good answer of to Bao, right? Yeah. But I can understand your question behind. You're trying to say there are differences in terms of culture between local companies versus multinational companies. Yes, there are, but some people can fit in, right? Some people can fit in better in a multinational environment. Some people can fit really well in a local Asian companies. So it's really about how you see yourself, what you values about, and also whether you are passionate and how do you see your own values within the organization.
But let me build on the key is company care about culture. So the takeaway point for the audience really is, if you're going to go interview for a company, you better look around and ask, what is the culture of the company? One way is to do it online by Google search, but that is not really useful sometimes. Ask your friends and see, do you know you have someone that works there? No matter they're senior or junior, doesn't matter. And say, can I have 20 minutes, 15 minutes with them, and ask a very simple question. What do you think about the culture? What's good, and what is the norm on the demand on? And then you got to come back and ask yourself, is that something that you can accept? Because don't lie to yourself. If this is a company culture, I tell you, I've been to Alibaba headquarters, and I am a sort of a client with them, and they say, oh, sure, we can meet, and let's meet at 8:50 tonight. And then I said, like, 8:50 is okay. Then I'm okay. So I asked my driver to drive me to eat earlier. I have lunch and I go there at 8:50. And when I arrive, they say, oh, you're very important. That's why we move the other appointments out, and you are now the earlier one. And after me, there's another meeting at 10, and there's another one at 11. Not internal, with outside partners. And it's just the way that they operate in Alibaba, and a lot of them just sleep there. But you have to understand. And I was working for Swire Coca-Cola, which is locally distributing and selling Coca-Cola. But we are a so-called international firm. We work hard, but we don't have meetings at 8 o'clock. We don't. It's just very culturally different. So you have to prepare and understand. So okay, so might be Bernard, from you, can you share about the trend differences of working for a corporate company versus startup? Maybe I will build on it a little bit more. is really is corporate, and there are big tech firms, and there are startups. So, how do you see the differences between these three?
It's interesting. I actually recently published an article on LinkedIn about this. But let me just do point one thing out. A lot of the corporate companies are trying to hire people from startups or with that startup culture, because a lot of the big established multinationals are having their market share eaten by these startups. So every single one of them is all trying to change as quickly as possible so that they can compete, right? And so, a lot of these corporate companies are starting to build teams, very unique teams that are different from the rest of the organization, but they want to hire people from startups. But really, ideally, it's people that have worked in big corporations, but also worked in startups, so they can sort of deal with both sides of the world. But I think the key difference is, and really a lot of, I've witnessed this in the last 12 months working with, more high growth companies and as well as corporate organizations, is that startups change like that. Like if you work in a multinational, and Stephen might be able to talk about this as Swire, a lot of talking. You talk, you have meetings. Maybe 6 months later, you're fast, then you have a strategy of a plan that everyone agrees to. And then you look to another year, maybe or so, and you start executing it, right? So by the time everything's done, and maybe a year, 18 months is already gone. With startups, they would see a market trend, or they would see something that they need to change, and they would push that forward 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, right? And so I think the biggest difference is really that, I'm going to use the word agility and adaptability, but is sort of speed to do that. And all startups are like that. And I think the other thing is really, startups are a lot more open to, as Stephen was saying, right? When he hires people who are not yes mans or yes women, right? You want to have your own point. You want to have your own thinking about the world and the product and whatever it is, right? So startups tend to want to hire people with that innovative, creative, inquisitive mindset, so that you can push for changes. And so, these are the two main things that I notice.
And I think for startups, really, you have to ask yourself, there's some risk. All startup will tell you that they have a big plan, they have money, but I've been to this before. Suddenly, things can be tough. And so if you can't handle any uncertainty, don't go to a startup. And also learn the differences between a startup versus an established tech company. Because I think sometimes people misunderstood. Google is not a startup. It's a very established company that doesn't go bust, and has a lot of money and a lot of people. A real startup sometimes at the very early stage is very different. And also about this so-called flexibility. Yes, a lot of the startup might have a very flexible lifestyle thing, like you can come and work at 10, but you have to realize this flexibility means both ends. When they need you, they need you. When they need you, we go a whole week, every night till 2 a.m. And then after we launch the function, we can rest for a day or two. That's come into the office by noon. But when they need you, they need you. So and if there's only 10 people in a small company, you can't say, well, sorry, I have 2 gym classes that I have to go to. I can't really actually now go do this. That's not possible. So you have to really realize that. So, okay.
One more thing I want to add, Stephen, if I may. There's also actually another category, right? There's big corporate companies, right? Obviously, we know who they are, and startups, of course, we know what that is. But I also talked about high growth organization.
Yes. Yeah.
And what that means is a startup, if I visualize it, picture it, startups are companies that are 0 to, let's just say 50, 100 people, right? Yeah. There's those companies in the middle where they maybe only been established for 2-3 years, but now they're looking at 100 to 1,000 people, right? And that's sort of a new category, not a new category, but that's another category in between the two that I would also look at.
Yeah, that's right. So I give you a little bit tips for our audience. If you want to interview for a firm and you want to know how big they are, I will send you a link here, something called TechCrunch, or it's a database. We type in the company. If it shows up, if they will say how much money invest in that. If it is under $2 million US, it's still very small. If that company have like 50 million, 100 million already invest in it, they have a lot of money and they create a lot of space. It's still uncertainty, but they are in the growth rate. So okay. So we have a question here from Karen. Let's take a look. Okay.
New corporate culture, especially in this new remote work model.
How do you adopt a new corporate culture, especially on this new remote work model? Okay, I think it's also related to, maybe we can answer that, and we can broaden it a little bit about, do you think remote work will change anything? Lisa or Bernard?
This is a tough question. I'm thinking.
Yeah. Maybe I share my own experience because I'm new to Heidrick. I've joined Heidrick for 4 months. So I was with previous firm for 15, 16 years. Actually, I find the remote work model, or, because people travel less these days, it's just, if they are based in Hong Kong, you can either, meet them face to face, or, if they are overseas, it's just so easy to, schedule a Zoom video and, maybe a call with them. Whereas in the past, people just travel like 70% of the time. I find it more difficult in the past. I think it's, there's no, I'm not sure if I can answer, how to fit in a corporate culture. It's really about, reaching out to others, trying to help, talking to more people, just doing a great job. That's at least how I was trying to adapt into the Heidrick environment and really reach out to people. And I just find these days with the COVID, people cannot travel. It's just a lot easier.
Okay, Bernard, your view? Anything different?
Yeah, look, I'm hoping that it's not going to be forever like this where we have to work remotely, because honestly, it's different from, if the three of us were together today versus doing it like this, it's totally different, right? And I don't think there's anything to replace, human face-to-face interaction. And so, but I think this is something that we all, when we come out of this pandemic, everything is going to be different, and we all know that, right? And there's going to be a lot more remote working, which we need to deal with, right? And so, I think it's just more, right now, the way I've been doing it is that I just I still remember when this pandemic started happening, I always switched off the video, because I don't like to see myself in video, right? So I'm kind of uncomfortable in the last hour, but I don't like to see myself, so I switch it off. But after maybe a month or so, I started just flicking it on, because it does make a difference, right? And so it's not easy, but I think you just got to push yourself to try new things and just try to do it. So that's my.
Maybe I asked some similarly related to remote work questions, but it's much more practical. Is we talk about all these companies moving regional headquarters to Singapore and Shanghai. Is there a remote chance some of these regional offices say, because we have test remote work, I can still let you based in Hong Kong and be in the regional team? Is it even possible, or no, it's not that far?
I think most of the companies do not want to make so many exceptions. I mean, if you can make 1 or 2 exceptions, then a lot of people don't need to move, right? They're trying to avoid. Except, I mean, there is like, they can allow maybe a couple of people still stay where they are, but I think they are trying to avoid that. And I think sometimes it's also commitments to the local governments. I mean, when they say they move to Singapore, there's definitely a commitment to the local governments for tax incentive reason, and also hire local staff. So it's not just about, working remotely. I think there's a lot of things behind.
But I don't think it's going to be long term to be able to work, because at the end of the day, to be able to be impactful in any organization, you really have to be very close with the people that you're working with, right? And remotely, I think is still, you can do that for maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, but in the longer term, you're sort of doing yourself this justice if you're apart from the corporate leadership team or even the direct team that you work with. I think it's hard on the longer term.
So I think the conclusion is, if you for big corporate, they're not ready still, even though you can do remote work. So if you want to join a super big company, regional headquarters, and I would argue even if it's a super big tech company, they're still not able to have a distributor team. But if you really want to do international remote work, there are some smaller tech companies that are based on an all remote model. I have friends that have a tech company that is engineering in South Africa, in China, in Hong Kong. You have to look for those, but those are relatively smaller, not so big. You have to bear with the risk. So, okay, so it is 2 minutes over already. So I would like to say thank you to Bernard and Lisa. We are going to have a few other events coming up in the future. On 2nd of February, we have Clara from Ogilvy talking about public relationship and influence, in the digital world, what are those sectors and how it is. And also, Kat is going to talk about branding and advertising as an industry. And Vicky in the future is going to talk about enhancing self-belief. Mingo, one of the startup investor and also a coach, is going to talk about career facilitation. So with that, I would like to say thank you to Lisa, thank you to Burnett for your valuable insight. And I will see you all in the next Newgig event, and take a picture of the Newgig QR code and you can sign in. So I hope. Last word, Lisa, last word, Burnett.
No, thank you and good night.
Well, I mean, we hope we're able to help. I mean, obviously we don't have a crystal ball for everyone, and
Yeah.
I think there is hope and opportunities. And I think when this pandemic goes away in the next couple of months, it's going to be like lighting a piece of paper on fire, right? I mean, it's going to go boom, and I think a lot of people will have opportunities after that. So I think just keep hopeful.
Thank you both. So go home.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.